My name is Dennis. I'm a software engineer at Flexa. Today I'm going to be talking about what we've learned over the past 5-something years of research into building good user experience for dApps and wallets, specifically drawing on our experience in facilitating digital asset payments. So if you're not familiar with Flexa, we are a digital currency payments provider. Today we power payments made in Bitcoin, Ether, Solana Pay, Lightning, you name it, across a whole bunch of brands, like the ones you see here. Flexa was founded in 2018 and aims to make payments better for merchants in almost every way. Cheaper, faster, safer, more secure. And we believe that distributed ledger technologies are a fundamental part of that mission. At Flexa, we're very focused on being app, asset, and network agnostic. Today we support over, 100 different digital assets and 12 different chains and networks. And that includes everything from using ApeCoin on Ethereum to pay at GameStop to using Bitcoin over Lightning in El Salvador, where we facilitate payments for the largest financial institution and at over 100 different small merchant businesses. We deal with payments in lots of different formats and using lots of different merchant backends. And we're really proud of the software that we've built because it can accept currency, digital currency, primarily because we spent so much time making a good user experience for paying customers like you and I. In that time, we've learned a lot about building dApps and wallets. So first, I'd like to introduce a couple of ideas that should help frame how to build a good user experience. Some of you may have seen Vitalik's post yesterday about what it's like to use crypto to make a payment. As someone who's made crypto payments in the past, it's awkward. It's not intuitive. It involves a lot more steps than you would like it to. And Vitalik said that a good user experience is not about the average case, it's about the worst case. And if I am roughly the average user, I shudder to think what it's like for the novice user. So not only is this true, but when it comes to crypto, it's a problem that we've kind of created for ourselves. And I'm going to try to explain that using these models of the transaction execution onion and the bubbles of trust. So the first concept I want to talk about is something called the transaction execution onion. Basically, this refers to the fact that you have to peel a lot of layers back to make a crypto transaction. To those of us who spent any time building crypto apps and wallets, it's easy to forget just how much you had to learn in that process and how all of these different concepts fit together to create a crypto transaction. And to be clear, these are all absolutely critical for a transfer to happen the way that a user expects it to. So you can see here, the user has to deal with a private key, an app, a wallet, an asset, a network, a connector, all just to make a single transaction. And they have to make these decisions every single time. So if you imagine a user journey where you have to complete multiple transactions, this scales. So for example, if I'm making a payment with Bitcoin, that's going to naturally restrict which networks I can use to complete that transfer. So no matter how you slice and dice this onion, one of the nice things about considering the layers is that it cascades really cleanly for novice users. And I bring up novice users because it's important to consider how we welcome more people into the space if we're ever expecting crypto to go mainstream. One of the things I'd like to highlight about the onion now is that some layers are far more relevant to the average user than others. The app, asset, and network are the most important decisions a user has to make to complete their transaction. In fact, I'm willing to bet that if a user can tell you what app, asset, and network they want to use, in 100% of cases, you can organically guide them to making the payment successfully. Now, before we move on to talking about the bubbles of trust, I want to take a moment to see why it is that we're all here. Because we're interested in building new forms of commerce and value exchange that ultimately benefit humankind. And the reason that this work is so critical and why this technology is so long overdue is because the existing way that value transfer works is fundamentally broken. So here we have the very first credit card. This is the Diners Club card. It was introduced 75 years ago. And believe it or not, credit cards today work basically the same way that they did 75 years ago. Every time that you complete a payment with your credit card, all of your sensitive information, that's not just the information on the card, that is your name, your address, all of that gets transferred, decrypted, processed, re-encrypted, passed around a round-trip chain anywhere from 6 to a dozen different entities. It's like sharing your seed phrase with every single company behind every single payment you make. It's ludicrous. Surprise! Now, in spirit of WalletCon, I like to believe it's not just crypto, but it's specifically wallets that fix this issue for users. Because instead of copying sensitive data throughout the network, users have access to software that can generate transaction signatures using a sensitive private key and then broadcast these innocuous messages as far and wide as we can. Sensitive data stays with the owner, and this greatly improves the efficiency, security, and consumer privacy. Except that in doing so, we've carved out a really sharp boundary between what people hold private and what can be made public. We've basically taught ourselves that it's okay to share your private key with a wallet, so long as you back up the seed phrase, of course, but that everything outside of that seed phrase should be completely stateless and regenerated on demand every single time. So dApps, accounts, the personal information backing those accounts, statefulness, all of this is expected to live outside of the keep to yourself bubble, alongside the data that's stored on the public blockchain. This is disempowering for the average person. So, to make sure that we can welcome in the next generation of digital asset holders, we need to consciously adopt a new layer that can thoughtfully aggregate things like email addresses, Discord handles, and other account information against public keys. We should be using individuals' public keys to deliver stateful experiences. The keep it to yourself bubble is an outer bubble that I like to call, around the keep to yourself bubble, there's another bubble called keep with care. And to be clear, this data doesn't need to be stored in a centralized way. Technologies such as ENS and Handshake go a long way towards decentralizing this stuff. But if we want to build the most impeccable dApps for the broadest audiences, it's worth thinking about the bubbles of trust as having multiple degrees of privacy and security rather than just one. So, having gone through those two concepts, I'd like to touch on some of the actual best practices that we've taken on at Flexa in our products. And a lot of these are going to be pretty intuitive, but I think that they are all worth stating and reinstating because they truly are necessary to deliver a good user experience, one that is intuitive, predictable, and convenient. First of all, use familiar names. I don't know about you, when I see an Ethereum address, all I see is gibberish. Honestly, what I see is something that kind of looks like base64 encoded. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There's no reason I should be staring at this on my screen. Things like ENS names are absolutely table stakes to deliver a good user experience. And if you don't have access to that, then at least use the now standard 4 convention to encode the wallet address in a consistent and reliable way. Minimize disruptions. When I first started working at Flexa, we implemented WalletConnect into one of our products, and I turned AutoConnect on. And maybe something changed recently. I think it must have because it's working now. But what used to happen is every time I refresh the page, I get a pop-up modal. Hey, did you want to connect your wallet? Hey, did you want to connect your wallet? Super disruptive, super annoying, absolutely has no place in the world of good user experience design. So the people who are visiting your dApp or your wallet, they're trying to do a thing. Don't get in their way. It's okay to make assumptions about the task that they're trying to perform, and as long as your assumptions are intuitive and reversible, these assumptions can go a long way towards improving the user experience. For example, a dApp should liberally auto-connect, assuming the connection can be done without user action, and any prior choices made in previous flows should be reinstated. It's kind of like a default, just to guide the user along in their journey. There's no reason something should be as hard to do the second time as it was the first time. Rule 3, get consent for data storage. So talking about the bubbles of trust, we've identified that there are certain pieces of information that can be used to provide a stateful experience that can live within the Dapper wallet. And it's important that the Dapper wallet present their privacy policy before the user connects their wallet to build good user trust and to ensure that the user has a good relationship with your software. Because if they don't trust your software, they're not going to use it. Request input dynamically. So in Web 2, basically everything that happens is user-driven. Like user clicks button, something happens. In Web 3, we have this roundabout user journey that goes through the blockchain. So you've got the user still doing some actions, but then things happen on the blockchain in real time that you need to be able to respond to. So it's important to provide messaging to the user about what actions they need to take to proceed on their user journey, and to also provide them feedback on what it is that we're waiting on. And that this feedback be accurate to what it is that's actually happening. If you're just showing a loading spinner, the user's going to think your app is stuck and they're going to hit refresh. That might be really bad. So try to be as accurate as possible in your user messaging. Facilitate choices using the onion. So this applies for both apps and wallets. I mentioned before that the transaction execution onion is organized into layers that aid specificity, traveling down the onion from app to wallet to asset to network is always going to be faster and more helpful than the other way around. For example, there are thousands of assets supported on Ethereum. Each of these assets may only be supported to one or a few networks. So rather than asking someone to select Ethereum and then their asset, ask them for their preferred asset, which will allow you to reduce the number of decisions that the user overall has to make, greatly reducing decision fatigue and, again, providing a better user experience. So, with all that said, there are, of course, areas for further research. Some of our best practices for impeccable dApp and wallet interactions are assuming this space will continue to evolve over time. So, some of the areas that we would like to see further research and further development in include facilitating reconnection requests with a specific public key. Currently, if I request a connection to a wallet, I get whatever address the user has as primary in their wallet. And let's say the user uses one address daily, but on my app, for some reason, there's another address they would prefer to use. If that is the address they've connected to me before, I should be able to request a connection to that specific public key. In line with that, surfacing dApp interactions and callbacks inside of WalletConnect chat would be great. And providing more connection context using metadata surfaced by the connector itself rather than just the display name, but also the logo and icon and any other relevant metadata, it will go a lot further to creating a more cohesive user experience and tightening the currently very fragmented ecosystem in Web 3. So, thank you very much. I've really appreciated the chance to speak to you all today. Again, my name is Dennis, so if you have any questions about this talk or about these concepts in general, please feel free to email me at dennis@flexa.network. Flexa also has an amazing SDK, so if you're developing wallets and you want to add instant in-store payments, for example, at Chipotle, Regal, GameStop, and more, please email us at apps@flexa.network.